Aston Martin is the talk of F1 and on the road is intending to extend its range with mid-engine supercars and even EVs. But for now, it's all about evolution with this, the brand new DB12. It's a car that Aston says has evolved from Grand Tourer to Super Tourer. We're here in France to find out whether it deserves the badge. The DB12 replaces the DB11, and beneath the skin, the two are closely related. But it's also very clearly a new car with a broader footprint and sexier looks wrapped around an updated version of the 11's bonded aluminium structure. Pricing hasn't been announced yet, but expect somewhere around $400,000. Of course, you can spend a lot more than that if you get serious with options such as carbon ceramic brakes and even a carbon roof. That puts the DB12 in firing range of a whole bunch of very fancy machinery. Ferrari, McLaren, Bentley, Porsche, take your pick. Instead of hinging the bonnet at the front in that classic big British sports car way, this has a more conventional bonnet. Underneath, there is one thing missing though. There's no V12 in the new DB12. Instead, it's got an updated version of that wonderful twin-turbo 4-litre V8. Not that many are likely to miss the V12, especially as this iteration of the V8 makes more power than the old V12. There's a full 500 kilowatts and 800 newton meters, and it drives the rear wheels through an 8-speed automatic transaxle. And the DB12 is fast, 3.6 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour, on the way to a top speed of over 325 kilometers an hour. The DB12 has those classic Aston proportions. Super wide guards, low slung stance, long bonnet, and massive 21-inch forged alloy wheels. Those wheels sit wider than ever, but thanks to frameless mirrors, Aston's kept the overall width in check. The door handles fold flush to maximise aerodynamic efficiency. In fact, how air flows around the DB12's body is key to its performance and dynamics. Air is channeled around the passenger compartment through sea ducts around the outside of the boot and then fired upwards of this slot to create an invisible air blade that runs almost a metre high. Up front, there's an evolution of the distinctive Aston grille, plus an enormous front splitter that looks like it could have come straight off a race car. That's partly why Aston Martin is bypassing the legendary GT moniker and instead referring to the DB12 as a Super Tourer. We've just dived into the car as the rain's hit, and it's the perfect time to be in here because what a beautiful cabin. The DB12 is officially a 2+2, and those back seats are really only for emergencies. Up front, you sit low with this high belt line, and it really involves you in the cabin. The cockpit is focused on the driver, but there's one big change for Aston. Instead of push buttons to select drive and reverse, there's now a stubby lever. It's teamed with paddle shifters for when you get serious. There's sumptuous leather, hand-stitched of course, and all the materials are really a step up on the DB11. In fact, there's been an enormous amount of work done entirely making this cabin an Aston cabin. There's also Alcantara, a new quilting pattern, and some more modern finishes to keep with the positioning of the DB12. As part of Aston's evolution with the DB12, it's invested a lot of money in creating its own HMI. No longer are you seeing Mercedes parts here. The whole infotainment system is unique to Aston and it's going to be carried through to their new models. It's a much more, I don't know, it just got that certain je ne sais quoi that Aston requires and really moves on from the DB11, because if there was one thing about the DB11, it was that there was obviously parts from their technical partner AMG. There's also tradition. Aston Martin has maintained separate controls for commonly used functions, such as volume and ventilation. The DB12 also switches out B&O audio for a new Bowers and Wilkins system. Right, well that's enough of these details. Let's see how the DB12 drives. The Aston Martin DB12 is an Aston Martin DB11 turned up to 12. It is a much more polished car. It's a much more capable car in every part of the spectrum of performance. In terms of at the comfort end, it's more comfortable, it rides better. At the performance end, it's sharper. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it probably advantages the Vantage. So what Aston's going to do with that next generation of Vantage is going to be really interesting, because it's going to have to be a much more performance-oriented car. This one, well, that Super GT label is pretty accurate. It is extremely comfortable, can eat miles, but then when you do want to turn up the wick, it is hellishly quick. Of course, the engine is the heart of any supercar or super tourer. The 4-litre twin-turbo V8 is familiar, but now it gets bigger turbos and modified cam profiles, as well as additional cooling to deal with that extra power. It's also tuned by Aston Martin's engineers to give it a unique exhaust sound. And the sound is spot on, not too loud, but loud enough to know you're driving a sports car. Forget the V12. If it's performance you're after, the V8 absolutely delivers. There's loads of pull low in the rev range, and it keeps delivering the harder you rev it, at which point there's impressive sound. One of the key goals of the DB12 was to increase the vehicle's breadth of capability. Although the suspension's based on that of the DB11, it really has been changed all over. The real champion here is those Bilstein DTX dampers. The chassis tuning boffins at Aston the ability to really essentially deliver the best of both worlds. Comfort when it needs to be comfortable, and really good body control when you're turning up the wick. Combined with improvements to torsional rigidity, it absolutely allows the DB to be better at what it does. There's another key ingredient to the DB12's dynamics, and that's the tyres. It's the first time the latest Michelin Pilot Sport 5S tyres have been fitted to a production car, and Aston's engineers work with Michelin to fine-tune the compound to maximise steering response and grip. The DB12 is really focused on bringing to life, bringing into the metal, Aston's desire to blend performance and luxury. It sees itself as the brand that can offer the most compelling, most engaging blend of luxury at one end and desirability in terms of materials and tactility and performance at the other end. You know, performance that they say they want to match and better, you know, the Italians, Ferrari, they want to match and better the Germans, Porsche. Yet at the other end, they want to give people that almost that Rolls-Royce experience, and certainly that Bentley experience. So it is an awfully challenging brief, but in many ways the DB12 matches that brief and probably delivers in as many as the areas that we can point out, at least this early and driving the car only for a day. Having said that, we've done about 500 kilometres today on a really wide range of roads, on some fairly trying conditions with some rain. You know, earlier we're talking a thunderstorm when I was doing interiors in the car. You know, it's really done a good job. The DB12 is also the first DB with an electronic differential, something that helps harness all that power, but also makes the car better behaved in corners. One of the keys to the DB12's breadth of capability is a total of 5 drive modes, which allow you to dial up different personalities, from cushy and cruisy to sharp and bruisey. The electronic smarts and adjustability allow you to quite significantly change the personality of the vehicle. That is in part what you want from a Grand Tourer, so it definitely ticks that box. It also helps ensure that the DB12 is by far the most advanced Aston ever built. It's got the in-cabin tech and ambience befitting its sports car status, and from the outside, it's a stunning looking vehicle, one where function is also built into that beautiful shape. Plus, it brings a new level of pace and performance, while still ensuring it pampers as a GT car should. So the question is, and the question we posed, is the DB12 worthy of the label Super Tourer? Well, in our experience today, almost 500 Ks in the car, not on Australian roads, granted, but it absolutely nails that brief. Luxury of a GT and the performance of a much more sharper, a much more focused performance car. So, Grand Tourer, tick that box. Super Tourer, I reckon we've just driven the first ever Super Tourer.